Jen here, and today I just wanted to do a quick update on Travis. I haven't done an update in a while, and I know some of you were curious about his brain tumor and what we're all doing. In January, he finished his chemo, or came close to finishing it. It was about, I think he had another one session or two, but he was supposed to have surgery in February around Valentine's Day. So we stopped the chemo about a month prior to when surgery would happen. And at that point, he had done over a year of chemo. He was in going on his 11th month of chemo. He had started in December, and it was January when we stopped. But he had taken some time off here or there for low blood counts. So he had to miss a couple weeks here or there to get his levels up to do the chemo. So we ended up cutting off, I think, a week or two of the last grouping of what we were supposed to do because we needed to be off chemo a month for the surgery. And then in February, the day before his surgery, we went up, John and Travis went up, and I took care of the kids at home. And he had his appointment with neurology, and they explained the surgery again, which we knew what was going to happen, and they were going in to remove the cysts. He has a brain tumor in the central part of his brain, and then he had cysts attached in various, one above and one below it, and they had been growing and pressing on his optic nerves to the point where he couldn't roll his eyes up, and it could be that it would affect his vision permanently, so they wanted to go in and remove the cysts, and if they were able to get any more of the tumor, they would. If not, they were just going to let it go because every time, well, it's in the center of the brain, so you can affect things, and the last surgery he had, it affected his sensory on one side of his body of hot and cold, so there's always something that could happen like that. At any rate, he went ahead and got his head shaved, all his hair shaved off, and special cups put on his head so that they could do a special MRI that would, he does an MRI every 3 months. He does an MRI every 3 months with contrast so they can see where the tumor is and the cysts are and how they're growing. But this would be a special MRI prepping for the surgery so that the surgeon had special picture of the stuff as he was doing surgery. So he was all prepped, and he went down and did his MRI, and then he was doing his lab work, and then he and John had just left after finishing the lab work and were off to go get some dinner and check in at a hotel because the surgery would be the next morning. And I got a call at home on my cell phone from the doctor, and then his neurologist called and said the tumor was the same size. It still is staying frozen from chemo, but the cysts had shrunk, which was the reason for the surgery. And because the cysts had shrunk, and they had shrunk significantly, he felt we didn't need to do surgery. It wasn't worth the risk at this point. So that was great. So I called Travis and Dad and told them, did you check into the hotel? You guys can just spend the night if you want. Otherwise, whatever. But Travis just wanted to come home, so he came home, and that night fairly late, and then he wanted to go to school the next day. So he went to school, and they were like, what are you doing here, Travis? Because, well, first of all, his head was shaved, and second of all, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be having brain surgery. Why are you at school? You know, they knew he was going to be missing probably the rest of the school year at that point. And so we explained to them that the cyst had shrunk and he didn't need the surgery, so he was able to finish out the school year. And then his next MRI was in May, which is about right because we do MRIs almost every 3 months. And we waited and waited and waited, and it was a full month. And I finally got in contact with our social worker and said, I haven't heard about his MRI results. And maybe it's at the board being reviewed, because they often take his results to a tumor board, and all the oncologists and all the neurologists talk over the best treatment plans and come to a consensus and then present us with choices. So at any rate, she checked in, and we got a call from his oncologist, which I missed. So she left us an email and a voicemail because she was going out of country for 3 weeks. and she basically said that the tumor still was frozen, which is great news. It means it's not growing. The chemo had, even though he'd been off chemo at that point, February, March, April, May, yeah, for 4 months, almost 5 months, the tumor wasn't growing. So that's good. And she said that we would meet her in July and that they were going to coordinate with the neurology team so that we can meet them in July on the same day, because it's a 2-hour commute up to the Children's Hospital. So each way for us. So that was really good news. And she said that maybe we can talk about getting his chemo port out at the appointment if it's feasible. So we'll talk about that in July. And then the next day we got a call from the neurology team, and he said the same thing, that the tumor was the same, and that's great. That's all we can ask for and hope for and pray for. And that the cysts were still shrinking. They weren't shrinking as much as the original shrinkage, but they were still somewhat shrinking a little bit. So that's really good news. And because of that, we don't need to do a surgery this summer. We weren't sure if we were going to need to make up that surgery from February over the summer, but we don't need to do a surgery this summer. So it's the first summer in 2 years. This is the 3rd year that we've been able to have a normal summer. Normal since the original diagnosis. We are not doing chemo, so we don't have to go up every week for chemo, and we don't have a surgery planned. Although if he removes his port, his chemo port, that would be a surgery. So we will have 1 surgery, but Travis is on board with that because he would like to get the chemo port out, because then he doesn't have to go for monthly flushes. Flushes where they take the chemo port and put saline solution in it to keep it clean, and so it doesn't get blocked or have an infection or anything. But Travis doesn't really like that process, so yeah, I think he's more in favor of removing the port. Plus then he can wear things over his shoulder if he wants, like a backpack, or ride things with straps, etc. So yeah, so that's kind of where it's at. I haven't given an update in a while, so I just wanted to touch base and give you guys a quick update. It's pretty good news for us. So we will be having an appointment at the beginning of July, just to meet with the teams and discuss the MRI scan options, like the ongoing MRI scans, whether it will be every 3 months or whatever. And also finishing up an appointment with the chemo clinic. They'll, just check everything with him, his levels and everything, and then possibly discuss the removal of the port and just the end of this stage of chemo for now, like what's all involved with that. So that's where we are, and I hope everyone's having a good day. Tomorrow we're going to be going to Thunderland with our Keaton's Child Cancer Alliance. They've adopted our family, and we went last year, and Travis had a really good time. Even though he was on chemo, he still had a good time. And tomorrow night is their annual Superhero at Thunderland Day, so Travis is really excited to go. So is his siblings, so yeah, we're excited about that. Anyways, just wanted to give an update on his status, because I haven't done that in a while, and I will catch you guys.